They called themselves the Varnak, a race of perfect predators wrapped in chrome flesh and synthetic muscle. They came from the dark edge of the galaxy, where stars died too young and mercy never learned to speak. They didn't negotiate, they didn't explain, they conquered, efficiently, mercilessly. Entire planets were swallowed into silence before resistance even had a name. That was before they met the SS Harten, a rusted, half-dead human freight vessel floating like a stubborn ghost just outside the Mars colony belt. I was aboard that wreck. My name's Cole Maddox, ex-soldier turned cargo grunt, scraping credits moving mineral crap no one cared about. I'd seen better years. Hell, I'd seen better decades. The Harten wasn't just my job, it was the last thing keeping me from becoming just another washed-up corpse in the vacuum. The attack came sudden. No warning, no diplomacy, just fire raining from the sky, and the kind of silence that creeps under your skin and stays there. The Varnak broadcast one message, translated and repeated in 30 human dialects. Surrender. You are now property of the unified Varnak Dominion. Resistance will be cleansed. Most of the crew didn't even make it to the escape pods. Screaming, hull breach alarms, the stench of burning oxygen. A mechanic got cut in half trying to close the lower bay door. Blood doesn't float nice in zero-G. It slithers, coats everything like red oil. But me? I didn't run. I don't know why, really. Maybe it was the pills they gave me back in the war. Maybe it was that part of me that never stopped wanting to go down swinging. Or maybe I just got tired of being told when to give up. I crawled my way through the Harten's maintenance shafts, rigged the fusion cores for a manual blow, and waited. Yeah, waited. Not to die, but to give them a proper introduction to human defiance. They docked. Their boarding party came in like shadows made of wire and bone. No voices, no emotions, just smooth, cold killing. But when the first Varnak stepped into engineering, I was already there. I pulled the manual override lever like I was pulling the pin out of a grenade straight from hell. The explosion ripped through the lower decks, sending fire up their boarding shaft. Screams followed. Mechanical, high-pitched, unlike anything I'd ever heard in the war. They weren't ready for pain, not like we were. They didn't expect a single man to willingly burn just to make a point. I didn't die, though. Woke up in a detainment chamber, cold, chained, alive. A Varnak interrogator hovered in front of me, its eyes like dying stars, voice processed through some black metal speaker. You are damaged, and yet you resist. Why? I smiled, split lip, teeth full of blood. Because I'm human, you dumb bastard, and we don't fold for monsters. The interrogator didn't respond for a long time, just stared like it was trying to figure out if I was glitched or defective. It spoke again. One unit cannot halt the Dominion. I leaned forward, yanked the chain hard enough to rattle their metal floor. Then maybe you should start worrying about what 1,000,000 of me could do. They didn't execute me. Not that day. Instead, they started watching, studying, testing. I was no longer a prisoner, I was a variable they hadn't accounted for. And as days passed, one thing became clear. They weren't afraid of humans, not yet. But they would be. They didn't feed me often, just enough to keep me from going limp. The food was synthetic, tasteless slop, dispensed through a panel like I was some lab animal. And maybe that's what I was to them. A curiosity. A stubborn insect they couldn't crush, so they caged it instead. I learned things while I sat in that steel tomb. They had no word for hope, no concept for it in their language matrix. To the Varnak, existence was order, submission, and efficiency. Emotions were waste, hesitation was weakness. Individuality? Treason. They'd conquered 76 species before us, bent every one of them into obedient silence. Some surrendered before the first shot was fired. Others fought for days, maybe weeks. But eventually every voice went still. Every culture, gone, assimilated or vaporized. But humans, we didn't make sense to them. They beat us, outgunned us, outnumbered us. We had no real fleets left. Earth was under martial lockdown. Mars lost contact with Phobos. Lunar Base was a crater. The colonies weren't answering anymore, and still, we fought. Not because we thought we could win, but because giving up just wasn't in our goddamn blood. They started sending in other captives. First, a woman. Looked like she'd been pulled straight from a mining ship near Europa. Her hands were still covered in grease, shaking. She didn't last long. Screamed when they touched her. Begged for release. When she broke, they incinerated her. Then a kid. Barely 16, maybe younger. I don't know where they got him from. He tried to stay quiet, but every night he'd sob when he thought I couldn't hear. I told him stories. War stories. About the time a squad of us got stuck behind lines and made it back using a dead Varnak suit and one hell of a bluff. He laughed at the part where we duct-taped the alien's metal head to my backpack like a trophy. They took him too. Didn't say why. After that, they stopped sending humans. Just me, now. I started noticing the changes. Small ones. The guards didn't come as close. One of them flinched when I coughed. Another double-checked its weapon before entering. They were machines, sure, but something was wrong with them. They were starting to fear. Then one day, the interrogator returned. Same one from before. Cold, unblinking. Its voice static-smoothed, but tighter now. Uneasy. We wish to understand your resistance. I smirked. You want to understand humanity? Start by understanding pain. And stubbornness, and the kind of rage you earn when you burn a man's world to ash. It tilted its head. You harbor primitive attachment to organic life, inefficient. You call it inefficient. We call it loyalty. You've never had someone die in your arms, have you? You've never watched a friend bleed out just to buy you 5 extra seconds to escape. That's why you'll lose. It leaned closer. We do not lose. That's when I laughed. Not forced, not fake. Real guttural laughter. It echoed off the metal walls and hit something primal inside them. For the first time, the interrogator stepped back. You already lost, I said. The minute you thought we'd break like the others. That night, I heard it. Distant. Barely there. But clear. Gunfire. It wasn't from the guards. It wasn't training simulation sounds either. These were messy, human-made shots, unpredictable, angry. I pressed my ear to the wall. Someone was fighting. I knew that sound like I knew my own pulse, and that meant someone had made it aboard. Somehow, somewhere, a breach had happened. Maybe a rescue, maybe a rogue cell, maybe just one angry bastard with a grudge and a stolen rifle. But it was enough. I smiled. Because if even one of us was still fighting out there, then maybe the Varnak weren't gods after all. Maybe they bled. And maybe I was going to get out of this cage. The cell lights cut out first. Not a flicker, not a warning. Just total suffocating blackness. The kind that crawls into your throat and makes you doubt whether your eyes are still open. Then came the sirens. Varnak alarms weren't like ours. No klaxons or red flashing lights, just this low, vibrating hum that felt like it drilled into the base of your skull. It wasn't meant to alert, it was meant to paralyze, to strip you down mentally, to remind you who was in control. But this time, they weren't. I could hear it now, louder than before. Gunfire, screams, metal tearing, boots, human boots, running across upper decks. Chaos. I stood up, heart pounding, body sore from weeks in chains. I pulled hard, again and again, until the shackles cut into my wrists. Didn't care. Pain was background noise now. I just needed one lucky break. Then, like a cruel joke turning kind, something exploded 2 floors above. The ceiling above my cell shook. Dust fell. And the lights, those oppressive white beams, came flickering back, but they were unstable. One burst, showering sparks, and my damn door, unlocked. It slid open with a groan like it hadn't moved in 100 years. I didn't think. I ran. The hallway outside was a mess. Black scorch marks everywhere. Blood, blue and red. Varnak and human. Smoke drifted like fog. One of their guards was on the ground, still twitching. Its metal exoskin split open like cracked armor. I grabbed its rifle, heavy, two-handed, pulse-charged, illegal by every Earth treaty. But I'd used one before, back during the Saturn skirmish, and once you've fired something that turns a wall into ash, it sticks with you. I moved fast, low. Every corner could have been the end of me. But I wasn't thinking about survival now. I was thinking about revenge. 3 turns later, I found the first human. She was hunched behind cover, breathing hard, bleeding from her thigh, still firing at something down the corridor. I didn't know her, didn't care. She was us. I crouched beside her and opened fire. The Varnak soldier across the hall took the blast square in the chest. Its armor melted inward. The thing collapsed, spasming, black fluid leaking from its core. She glanced at me, surprised. "You're a prisoner." "Not anymore." She laughed. It sounded cracked and close to delirious. "Thought we were the only ones." "How many of you?" 4, maybe 5 now with you." I nodded. "We regrouping or dying separately?" She looked at her wound, then at me. "Up to you. But either way, I'm not going down in a cell." We pushed forward. Room by room, hall by hall. We picked up another man along the way, older, bald, missing an eye, but built like a tank. Didn't say much, just aimed and fired like he'd done it his whole life. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were survivors with nothing left to lose. We made it to what looked like a control hub. Dark screens, blinking panels, Varnak symbols lining the walls. I kicked the dead operator's body off the chair and sat. "Tried hacking one of these before?" I said, fingers flying over the controls. "Didn't end well." "You got a better idea now?" The woman asked. "Nope, just more motivation." It took me 5 tries, a lot of swearing, and the rifle's heat core to the panel casing, but I got in. And when I did, I saw everything. Every ship, every colony, every world they'd taken, all logged, all organized, like inventory. I paused at one entry. Earth sequence ready proc. 79%. They were preparing full assimilation. No turning back. The final stage. The one that meant our planet wasn't going to be conquered. It was going to be erased. I looked at the others. My voice came out low, controlled. "We're not here to escape anymore." She blinked. "Then what the hell are we here to do?" I loaded another charge into the rifle and stood. "We're going to burn this ship from the inside out, and we're going to make damn sure Earth knows someone fought back." The bald guy finally spoke. "How?" I smiled for real this time. "We hijack the Varnak's beacon, and we tell the whole galaxy. You want to conquer humans? You better bring more than fear." Because they thought they'd broken us, but all they'd done was light a fuse. We didn't have a real plan, just instinct, rage, and a burning need to make every second hurt them back. The Varnak ship was massive, not built like human vessels. It didn't have soft curves or smooth decks. Everything was jagged, layered, sharp like it had been designed by a species that never trusted each other enough to build round edges. The walls pulsed faintly, organic tech mixed with alloy and darkness. It felt like walking through the belly of a beast. I led the way, pulse rifle tight against my shoulder. Every step forward was a step deeper into their fortress. But I wasn't scared. I was done being prey. I was hunting now. We hit a node chamber, what they used instead of a data core. The woman, Harper, yeah, she'd finally given a name, limped beside me, her thigh bleeding through makeshift gauze. She didn't complain. Neither did the big guy, who'd taken a blast to the ribs and still moved like a tank on fire. We wired charges to the first 2 data conduits, makeshift explosives from energy cells, thermal gel, and raw defiance. It wasn't elegant, but if it went off, it would fry every processing system from Deck 6 through 9. Harper turned to me, eyes heavy. If we detonate these, they'll reroute control. We need to hit command. Already planned for it, I said. We hit them here, split off, and storm the bridge. And what if we don't make it? I looked at her and said something that tasted too honest. Then at least they'll know we existed. Before she could answer, alarms shrieked again, this time louder. The Varnak had found the bodies, found the scorch marks, found us. We moved fast. By the time we got halfway to the bridge, the lights flickered, and the floor trembled. The first charges went off. Beautiful, bright, and loud enough to shake my bones. The ship howled. Yes, howled. Not just metal tearing, but something else. Something deeper, like the ship felt pain. Like the Varnak had tied their very minds into the thing. I didn't care. I hoped it screamed until its circuits bled. At the central corridor, they came for us. Not drones, not guards, command units, twice as tall, faster. Their limbs split mid-joint, and their weapons were grafted into their hands, blades, cannons, plasma spikes. You didn't fight these things head-on. You didn't even run. But I did both. The first one came sprinting, leaping over the railing like some twisted panther. I dove under it, rolled, and shoved a shock mine into its back panel. It turned to slash. Too slow. The blast tore it in half. Its pieces twitched, sparking, dripping fluids like oil and acid. Another one rushed Harper. She was ready. She waited until it got close, dropped her rifle, and pulled 2 heat charges from her belt, slammed them both against its face, took the hit as it slammed her against the wall. She went down. The thing stood over her, metal jaw grinding open. Then its face lit up. She'd primed the charges. It exploded like fireworks on a black Christmas. Metal rained down. She didn't get up. I rushed to her, blood on her temple, breathing, shallow but there. She opened one eye. Did I look cool? I grinned. You looked insane. Close enough. We pulled her up, half carried, half dragged to the access lift. The bald guy, Reed. He said his name was. He hit the override and jammed a crowbar through the controls, just in case we needed to trap something below. The lift shot up. Deck after deck flew past. Then, we reached the bridge. No guards, no turrets, just silence. We stepped inside slowly. Everything was black glass and humming nerve tech. In the center, the beacon, a pulsing orb of light and data, tied directly to the Dominion's fleet AI. This was it. The voice came from behind us. You cannot win. The interrogator, still alive, still watching, its form now partly burned, one arm dragging. You misunderstand what you are. You are the end of a page, a footnote in our expansion. I raised my rifle. Number, we're the stain that won't wash out. It lunged. I fired, right through the skull, point blank. No drama, just execution. We had no time left. Reed ran to the beacon, wired the charge. I punched in a message on the control console, broadcasted across every Dominion frequency. This is humanity. You think you've broken us? You haven't. This ship dies screaming, and we'll be the last voice you hear. I hit transmit. Then we ran. The beacon went up like a dying sun. We didn't look back. No one ever survives the noble last glance. We ran like hell was chasing us. And maybe it was. The walls screamed. No exaggeration. That ship, that whole monstrous thing, it felt it. The pulse of our broadcast had overloaded its neural lattice, corrupted its systems. You could hear the decks groaning like the bones of something ancient finally breaking. Reed carried Harper on his back. She kept drifting in and out, murmuring nonsense, eyes fluttering like they were trying to escape the pain. I led point, my rifle down to its last 2 charges, my body screaming from bruises, dehydration, and sheer adrenaline. My legs moved on instinct, pure survival, nothing poetic, just the animal part of me kicking and kicking until it was free. Behind us, doors slammed shut, bulkheads melted, fires licked at the edges of the corridor. This wasn't a ship anymore, it was a tomb, closing in, and we were 3 stubborn bastards trying to crawl out of its mouth. We reached the lower bay, a freight dock meant for supply hauls. It was empty now, hollow. But by some miracle one of their smaller scout crafts was docked and intact. "No guards?" Reed asked. "Too busy dying upstairs?" I said, rushing forward. We got inside. The controls were alien. No buttons, just slots and nerve-tethered fibers that pulsed when touched. I hated their tech. Too alive, too aware. But I'd learned enough back in the cell, watching their interfaces. I jammed my hand into the pilot tether. It burned, not like heat, like it was crawling into my veins, reading me. I gritted my teeth and roared through it. The ship responded. Systems lit up, dock clamps released. "We're flying this thing!" Reed shouted, bracing Harper in the back seat. "Not flying," I said. "Escaping." Then I hit launch. The scout vessel detached, thrusters kicking in just as the hangar exploded behind us. Fire chased us into the void. If we'd been half a second slower, we'd be space dust and fragments. But we weren't. We punched through the chaos and into black. I watched through the viewport as the Varnak flagship cracked open from the inside. Fires ripped across its spine. One of its wings folded in like wet paper. Then, boom! A chain reaction lit it up. Energy bursts, internal reactor surges, plasma spills. All of it tearing through that perfect, soulless machine like vengeance made real. It was beautiful. I turned away before the light faded, heart thudding like war drums, my throat dry, my ribs aching. But I was alive. We all were. But that was only part of it. We didn't just escape. We broadcasted. We hijacked their clean little network, polluted it with raw human defiance. Every Varnak vessel in this sector, hell, maybe across the whole damn Dominion, heard us. They saw that ship burn. They saw their gods bleed. And now they knew. Earth wasn't finished. Not yet. I set a course toward the outer belt, neutral space. No patrols. Maybe a place to land, refuel, hide. We had to get Harper stable. Reed had already used his own shirt to stop the bleeding, and I could tell by his shaking hands he didn't expect her to last much longer. Still, she cracked open one eye. Did we win? I looked at her. Looked at Reed. No, I said, but we reminded them we're not done losing yet. She chuckled, weak but real. Then her eyes closed again. The stars stretched ahead of us. Behind, nothing but wreckage. Ahead? Who the hell knew? But I could feel something shifting. Not just out there. In me. I wasn't just some cargo grunt anymore. Wasn't a discarded soldier. I was something else now. I was proof that a single human could still burn a goddamn empire. We drifted for 3 days through dead space. No signal. No aid. No goddamn clue where we were headed. Harper's condition stabilized. Barely. Reed kept her alive using scrap bandages, IV packs pulled from a med kit we salvaged from the back of the Varnak scout vessel. Her breathing was shallow, but it was there, strong enough to keep hoping. I took first watch, and second. Barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that ship exploding, felt the heat chewing at my back, the Varnak's voice in my head still echoing. You cannot win. Bullshit, we didn't win that day, but we made a mark, a scar, and that was more than anyone else had managed since this war began. It was Reed who noticed the change. We were about a half-day into a new drift vector when the ship's proximity scanner lit up like a flare. 4 red pings, tight formation, small, fast-moving. "Varnak scouts?" he asked, already shouldering the stolen rifle. I shook my head. Too close together. Varnak don't fly like that. The pings got closer. Then a hail came through. Static first. Then a voice. Human, male, rough, like he'd smoked too much and seen worse. "This is the Breaker's Hand. Identify yourselves or be treated as hostiles." Reed and I shared a look. I flipped on the comm. "This is Cole Maddox, formerly of the Harton Freighter. We're flying a stolen Varnak scout. We're not your enemy." Static. Then the voice returned, harder now. "Say something only a human would know." I didn't hesitate. "Pain doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're still alive." Silence. Long. Too long. Then, "Copy that. Docking beacon locked. We're bringing you in." Relief hit me like a gut punch. When the 4 ships surrounded us, I finally saw them. Old Earth tech fighters. Scratched, scarred, but alive. These weren't military. These were pirates, renegades, survivors. People like us. The Breaker's Hand turned out to be a refitted mining rig. Ugly, loud, glorious. As we docked, a dozen men and women in patchwork armor met us, weapons raised. They weren't smiling. But they weren't shooting either. Their leader stepped forward. Big guy. Grizzled face. One eye replaced with a red lens that whirred when he looked at me. "You're the one from the beacon broadcast." "Yeah," I said. "And we're not done yet." He stared at me like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Then he nodded. "Come inside. We need to talk." We carried Harper on a stretcher. She didn't even stir. They cleared a room for her, started real treatment. Their doc, ex-military judging by his attitude, hooked her up to proper fluids. Said she had a shot if we got her stable oxygen and sleep. Meanwhile, I was dragged to what passed as their briefing room. Round table. Screens full of static. Stale coffee smell. The leader introduced himself as Captain Braddock. No rank, no background. Just Braddock. "You know what you did?" he asked. "I blew up a Varnak command ship and hijacked their network." "Number you lit a goddamn match in a powder room. That broadcast you sent, it didn't just reach our sector, it went far. Farther than any of us thought was possible. You knocked out their nav grid for 4 systems, scrambled everything." "Good. Yeah, real good. Except now they're hunting." I leaned back in the chair, arms crossed. "Let them come." Braddock gave me this long, hard look. Not anger, not admiration either. Just calculation. "You want to fight, Maddox, I get that. But what you don't know is that you just became the symbol people were waiting for. A story. A spark." He stood, turned on a map of nearby systems, red zones blinking. "Resistance cells are forming. Colonies we thought were silent are back on comms. A few are mobilizing. We've seen Varnak ships retreating from fringe zones." I blinked. "Retreating?" Braddock grinned, but there was no humor in it. "They're shook, and you know why?" I said nothing. He stepped closer, voice low. "Because for the first time in centuries, someone made them bleed. And not just bleed, but scream. They thought they broke humanity. You proved they only pissed us off." That hit me harder than I expected. My stomach twisted. I wasn't built for speeches. I didn't want medals. I just wanted vengeance. But if my anger gave someone else a reason to rise, I wasn't going to stop it. Braddock leaned over the table. "We want you to lead the next op. We're hitting a Dominion relay station. Big one. Deep space. Not guarded like the flagships, but nasty. We blow that. We cut their line to half their central fleet." I didn't flinch. "Then load me up, and get me a new goddamn rifle." They gave me the rifle I asked for, and then some. Old Earth-made blackened steel, heavy in the hands like a real weapon should be. No alien nonsense, no pulsing nerves or reactive biocircuitry, just raw firepower that kicked like a beast and spoke in the language of violence. I'd almost forgotten what it felt like to hold something honest. Braddock's crew worked fast. They weren't soldiers, but they were close enough. Mercs, defectors, survivalists, people who'd been scraping by in the Dominion's shadow for too long and were finally ready to push back. I respected that more than polished uniforms and pre-planned formations. Reed was suited up and ready beside me. Harper was still unconscious in the med bay. "Stable," the doc said. "She'd live, if we lived long enough to come back." The op was simple. "Get in, plant the charges, broadcast another message, and cut the Dominion's spine in this region." The relay station wasn't huge, but it was central, connecting half a dozen sectors. It was how the Varnak kept their fleets in sync, how they updated targeting data, how they tracked every rebel whisper. Braddock had intel that only a skeleton crew remained, automated drones and a handful of command AI. But I didn't trust skeleton crews. Skeletons still kill. We took one of their stealth rigs, patched with Varnak shielding. They wouldn't see us until we were inside. By then, it'd be too late. The station came into view through the viewport, hanging in the dark like a parasite feeding on a star's dying light. No lights, no windows, just long arms of antennas and docking arms like spider legs. I hated it on sight. We docked on the underside. Quiet, surgical. I led the breach team. Me, Reed, a girl named Thorne with a demolitions background and a mouth worse than mine, and a tech called Dell, who looked more like a junkyard rat than a hacker. Inside it was cold. Too cold. No gravity, no heat, no sound but our breaths and the occasional ping from Thorne's motion sensor. We split, 2 pairs. I took Dell. Reed and Thorne headed to the primary power conduits. Dell floated beside me, silent, until we reached the relay core. He plugged in and started working. Then he stopped. "This thing, it's not standard." He muttered. "What do you mean?" "I mean it's talking back." I aimed the rifle at the dark beyond the core. "English?" Number not even Varnak. Some kind of adaptive language, shifting symbols. It's trying to understand me. "Stop talking to it," I snapped. Too late. The lights turned on. Bright, blinding, then red, sirens, and a voice. "Human vessel identified. Resistance classification." Maddox Dell looked at me, pale. "It knows you." I didn't hesitate. I shot the core panel. Sparks burst. The relay screamed. All around us, walls slid open, and drones spilled out like bugs from a carcass. Not small, not recon. These were combat units, upgraded, fast. "Dell, run!" I covered him, firing burst after burst. They closed in like they'd been waiting, like the whole station was a goddamn trap. Dell took a hit, shoulder torn open, but he kept moving. I dragged him behind a console and tossed a thermal charge into the hall. Boom! The corridor lit up. Then Reed's voice came through the comm, panting, angry. "We're under attack. This wasn't skeleton anything. They lured us here." I grit my teeth. Of course they did. They wanted me. Wanted to turn the symbol into a corpse. Broadcast my death. Undo what we started. Not today. "Thorne, do you have the charges set?" I shouted into the mic. "Yeah, but we're pinned down. These things don't die easy." "Pull back to my position. We regroup and blow this hellhole together." They started moving. I kept shooting. By the time they reached us, Dell had passed out. Reed had taken a slash to the leg, and I was down to my last magazine. Thorne looked at me, eyes wild. "What's the plan?" I looked around. No exit. Too many. We couldn't win, but we could finish what we came to do. "Set the detonator. Manual. 10-minute fuse." She didn't argue. As she worked, I turned to Reed, then to Dell's limp form. "You two carry him. Get back to the rig." "What about you?" Reed asked. I loaded the last clip. I hold the line. You'll die. I smiled. Maybe, but they'll remember. Thorn looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't. She handed me a backup charge, nodded once, and ran. I waited. They came again. Dozens. I met them with fire and rage and all the fury of a species that refused to be forgotten. The blast didn't kill me, but it came close. I don't remember the moment it hit. Just white. Heat. A sound so loud it became silence. Then the slow crawl back into my own body, lungs wheezing, ribs screaming, vision flickering like a dying screen. I was buried under metal, sharp, hot. The floor above me had collapsed, smoke thick in my throat. Everything smelled like burning flesh and fried circuits. My own blood mixed with the coolant leaking from a severed pipe above me. Couldn't tell what part of me still worked, maybe none of it. But I was still breathing, still here. That meant they failed. I dragged myself out, inch by inch, hands shaking, every nerve howling, but I didn't stop, didn't cry, didn't pray. I just moved. When I reached the corridor, it was blackened ruin. The Varnak relay was gone, cored from the inside out. Their drones were scattered across the floor like toys abandoned in fire. Some were still twitching. Most weren't. I limped to the hangar, and there she was. The stealth rig, still docked, still intact. And standing at the ramp, with a bloodied face and a bandaged leg, was Reed. "You look like shit," he muttered. I laughed, or tried to. Came out like a cough through broken glass. "Thought I told you to leave." "You did," he said. "So I didn't." He helped me in. The crew inside went quiet when they saw me. Wide eyes, like I was something crawling back out of the dead. Thorn was there too. She looked worse than before, but alive. Del, unconscious but breathing. Hooked to a fluid drip, stitched up. Braddock's doc had worked a miracle. We took off seconds later, leaving that twisted station behind as it drifted in pieces across the void. And just like before, we broadcasted. Same frequency, same defiance. Relay destroyed. Another Dominion link severed. This is Cole Maddox. Still breathing. You want to break us? Come closer, I'm not done killing. That message went viral, faster than the last, because now it wasn't just words, it was proof. Another Varnak stronghold gone. Another piece of the unstoppable empire cracked open by human hands. And not soldiers, not generals. Just a handful of pissed-off nobodies who refused to vanish. Braddock met us back at the breaker's hand, face grim but eyes lit with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Hope. "Your name's spreading like wildfire," he said. "Even the Martian resistance is quoting you." "I'm not here for speeches," I said. He grinned. "You better get used to it. You're the spark now." I looked at the crew. At Thorn, wiping blood off her face. At Reed, patching up Dell's gear with hands too tired to shake. At Harper, awake now, sitting upright in the med bay, her voice rough but proud. "We heard the broadcast," she said. "Made me sit up." "Figured it would," I replied. I stayed quiet for a long time after that. Sat at the edge of the hangar, watching the stars, feeling the weight of what we'd done. Not just the explosions, not just the losses, but the shift, the change. The Dominion wasn't a god anymore. It bled, it stammered, it hunted me now, which meant it was scared. Good. Let them fear. Let them burn. Because humanity wasn't done. Not even close.